Another common question that we get asked, and I'll open this up to Julian first, and then Russ, have you jump in, is how enterprises should be thinking about the front and back end tech stack as they modernize. You have any thoughts there, Julian?
Sure. I mean, there's been some long established trends that I feel have really come to fruition. I mean, one that a lot of places take as just a guaranteed now is the approach where we separate front and back end via RESTful interfaces. Every year or so, there's another technology that seems to try to backtrack on that and offer some relief to those that don't want to immerse into the very fast-changing architecture of the front-end world. But I don't think many people are buying into that as an approach. The two leading stacks we find at the moment are React and Angular, and they're very opposite. So finding a match between those two can be a very soul-searching activity. On the one hand, React is so unopinionated in many ways. You know, it provides lightning-fast updates, a very minimalist approach, and is great, but it gives you an open hand with which you can do good and bad things. Patterns become incredibly important there. You really need to make sure you're establishing that front-end technology roadmap and having people follow it. Angular is really the total opposite. It's very exciting that as we went from Angular 1 to 2, we had one very established enterprise heavily used framework actually coming with an upgrade path to something that was substantially better and renewed over the original. That's something that doesn't happen too often in the front end. Again, I think it matters tremendously that teams have patterns they follow. JavaScript, even when you add TypeScript, which is something we believe firmly in as something that provides benefits for type safety, even with that, JavaScript is something where you can just have less code organization. You can have too many open questions left to the developer as they start on a new piece of work. And the more you can answer those with a repeated approach that everyone on the team can understand when they look at it for the first time, the payback from that is just immeasurable. The other thing I think is really worth calling out is that RESTful separation. There's a textbook answer, we've got RESTful endpoints. But as you get into front-end builds, you soon find you need to start optimizing pieces. You start to say, okay, Chrome's going to run out after n requests. It's going to get choked. Let's combine this data with this data to make sure our app gets the data it needs all in one place. I think my big caution there is just don't optimize prematurely, because the more you gear those data feeds to exactly the way your front end is built, the more coupled you are between back and front end. And if somebody does happen to rewrite this guy in 3, 4, 6 years, they might find those REST endpoints are kind of not what they needed anymore, because they weren't built to represent a transport of domain objects or a part of the domain. They were really geared to this look and feel of this page.
That's great. Russ, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what Julian said really follows through for the back-end technologies as well. I mean, if you're taking a look at building an application, premature optimization is definitely something that I've seen done over the years. It's I found in some of the previous work that I've done, different companies that I've done, that the teams can be separated, and there can be a bit of a firewall between them, between the front end team and the back end team, and there isn't really always good communication from even a product standpoint, right? Just a holistic, this is what we're ultimately trying to do. So the back end teams really don't necessarily know, and they end up building an API to what Julian was talking about, which might be really flexible, but giving you a lot of discrete pieces of information, but then really kind of causes some performance and performance anxiety in the front end, because you now have to have lots of chatty calls back and forth in order to get what you need. Incredibly flexible, but really inefficient for a particular goal that you're trying to accomplish. So having a good holistic sense of what you're trying to build is going to be important. And understanding the technologies that you want to use. What is your who's your audience? What are they expecting from your application? Are they expecting This is going to be a sub-second response time. Are you going to be doing with hundreds of calls a minute? Are you going to be doing hundreds of thousands of calls a minute? Right? How do you build that application in a way that actually is going to service your community very well? What are your perhaps cyclical events over the course of the year? Do you get really busy at Christmas? Around Christmas time for Black Friday sort of stuff? Do you get really busy more in tax season? Are you more of a travel site that's busy in the winter or the summer for travel, that sort of stuff? So where do you have your peaks and valleys? How do you build for that? Are you looking to move up into the cloud? Can you take advantage of separating, that redesign that comes along with it, right? Don't just think about necessarily lift and shift. Can you take advantage of the cloud technologies to be able to help you with those peaks and valleys? The different technologies that are available to be able to separate out your functionality so that you can actually be much more responsive to users as well as to your front end team and any other teams that might be trying to consume your services.